Hello, hello. My name is Linda, also known as Torta Jala around the internet, and I love creative journaling and all things stationery. So, lately I have been recaptured by Hobonichi and, of course, watching all the hauls and unfortunately also lusting over new designs that I never thought about and didn't consider before. And I guess that's what happens when you keep consuming that type of media. So, to curb my own shopping tendencies, I decided to look back at my own stash, and then I came across my old Hobonichi cousin from 2023. And I wanted to show a comparison with my current A5 Midori one day, one page. I have used both of these for memory keeping, and the reason I switched from Hobonichi to Midori was because the weekly portion in the cousin is just something I don't want to do and don't need. The daily pages were already a lot to keep up with, and it was like pressure to document something on a daily basis, like some amazing memory. So even though like I can let go of that and have blank pages as well, um, my A5 memory keeping is so chunky as you can see because of all the photos and ephemera that I collect. I thought that after 2023, if I wasn't forced with the daily dated pages for memory keeping, then maybe my book would be obviously less chunky. So that's why for 2024, I went with the Midori one day, one page. But it is September now, and unfortunately, as you can see, um, there really hasn't been that much difference because the year is not even over yet, and my Hobonichi 2023 was huge, of course, but my Midori is basically like on the same road, right? It looks like it's going to be just as chunky when I'm done with it this year. So, my Hobonichi I have shown before on this channel at the end of 2023. I can't show like every single page in detail because there are photos of other people and kids that I don't have permission to share, and even my own kids I'm not really sure how much I want to share, even though I've already shown them before. But yeah, that's a whole different story. But basically, in this Hobonichi, I do not include the summer months when we are on vacation or traveling because I wouldn't take this with me. And so, whenever we're traveling or on vacation, I switch to doing memory keeping in a traveler's notebook insert. So, just like this year for the month of August, I made a whole insert just for the month of August because we were road tripping and doing different things here in Italy. And I do have a video on the making of that, so you can go check that out on my channel. So in this Midori for this year, I, didn't include anything for August, but it's still just as chunky. I still have this problem with, the chunk factor. I mean, it's something that I like, but at the same time, it does get annoying because towards the end, like second half of the year, it is annoying to write in such like a bumpy, like hump kind of surface. And generally, the book itself, it just gets unwieldy, right? Like hard to handle because, I mean, it's hard to handle for me. Imagine my little kids, right? Because my kids do like to flip through these memory keeping books. So when you have such a heavy, giant book, it's just hard to maneuver and use in your hands. So in other years, I have tried different, sizes, formats, half years, weeklies. I just still haven't found my sweet spot. But the latest thing that I've done is the Hobonichi Cousin, and then this year switched to the Midori. I just have this love affair with having like a whole year in one book. I really like that idea, but obviously the way that I memory keep is just so bulky. It's like the two things are not compatible. Maybe I just have to let go of that idea of having everything in a book. I don't even include, right, like the summer months. So um, I don't know. Maybe I need to embrace a new way, or perhaps hold back on my ephemera, like be more, like curate things a little bit more. But it's really hard to judge, like as you go, regarding ephemeras and photos and trying to figure out like how much is too much. Yeah, I just haven't figured out what is the best for me just yet. But I wanted to take this opportunity, since I have these two books, to show you and sort of compare and contrast a Hobonichi Cousin and a Midori One Day One Page. They are both A5 sized and they're both marketed as planners. But you will see that many people use them for journaling, like memory keeping, archive style, or even like creative collage or like watercoloring, painting, drawing. I've definitely seen that in the Hobonichi as well. So there's definitely a mix of how people use these quote unquote planners besides for planning. Okay, first let's look at the Hobonichi. It is a dated A5 size planner called the Hobonichi Cousin, and the this like original version has a cardstock type of cover, but now they do sell another version that is hard covered with various other designs as well, called the Hone, and they also have a two book version called the Avec, which basically is the same thing but split into two books for the year. And these books, they have 52 GSM Tomoe River paper, and that's sort of the unique feature because the paper is fountain pen friendly but very, very thin, so you can have many pages to like allow for an entire year in one book that isn't like huge, right? So when you first get it and it's still a new book, it's obviously like easy to handle. I've obviously chunked it up, but I mean, it's, a hefty book, but not so hefty that some people do carry it around with them. So the pages, it has yearly overview pages, vertical sort of monthly view with all 12 months that many people use for like tracking or indexing. And then you have the very traditional, like calendar format, monthly pages. And they give you the month before the year starts. Then you can see here there's December, but then it goes through the entire year of months. And I use them for just like overview one memory. But basically, it goes all the way to the next year, and you get an extra 3 months, January, February, and March. I think I glued my March page to the other page here, but there are like 3 extra months that would be good for like future planning. And then the Hobonichi Cousin also has the feature of the weekly pages. So it is a weekly vertical layout with the time in military format on the left of each column, from 5 a.m. all the way to like 4 a.m. So you really have the whole 24 hours here, even though not everyone, fills it all in or uses all those hours. Some people just block off like certain parts for notes or other journaling, but you really could time log, like time block your schedule in detail in these weeklies. So you can see that I started off very strong doing very decorative weeklies. It's fun and nice to have. I do like what I've created, but I found myself like duplicating information because, of course, there are dailies, and I wasn't sure, like, am I just straight logging information? But then I found myself wanting to like journal or add some notes or, more like journaling notes rather than just a log. And ultimately, I dropped off and didn't use these weeklies because there are the daily pages. I felt that I was duplicating information, and so I didn't want to do that. So after all the weeklies, they give you like an opening spread to sort of do like a vision board, and then it jumps into the daily pages. And these are one page per day, dated pages. And I'm using them for memory keeping, but of course you can use them as a planner because they do have a lot of information here that, like, the layout is probably meant more for planning. So let me go to blank spread so that you can see what the daily pages look like. You basically have the date here and then the check boxes on the right for like, maybe tasks or priorities. And on the left-hand side, you do have a timed sort of column format, but it's a little reduced. It only goes from like, 6 a.m. down to like 3 p.m. or so. So it's less time, it's not like the whole 24 hours kind of thing, even though there is room to add more hours like before and after. And so you have these grid style pages, but there are quotes on the bottom. If you get the English version, the quotes would be in English, but traditionally the Japanese version has the quotes in Japanese. And a lot of people I see just cover up these quotes. I don't think everyone is into them, but they are an integrated part of like the Hobonichi. But that means that on an A5 size page, you are losing real estate. And a note about this paper, because the Tomoe River paper has changed from previous years. It's like Tomoe River paper, but now it's Tomoe River S for Sanzen. And some people have complained about it. They don't like it. I think it just really depends on what pens you use, how inky, like what you use. I don't think stamping, like it's usually not a great thing in Hobonichi. There's a lot of ghosting and it might even bleed through depending on the ink that you're using to stamp. But usually like, most fountain pens work fine, gel pens. That's what people like about this paper. And also people use it for watercoloring or sort of mixed media, and people tend to like the crinkliness of the page. Hobonichi themselves, they usually, if you buy direct from their store, they give you a ballpoint uni jetstream pen with their planner. So it sort of makes sense that their planner is designed to be used with like that pen in mind, right? So if you're like a regular pen user, you definitely are not going to have problems. It's hard to know, I realize, if you're going to like it or not, the paper, unless you try it. For my purposes of memory keeping, I sort of felt like I was not doing justice to the paper or wasting the paper because I was doing a lot of collage. I was adding photos, so I'm just like covering the page. And I have a lot of ephemera and deco, so I'm not always writing a lot. I mean, sometimes I do, but not always, especially when I'm catching up. So it's almost like I'm wasting the Tomoe River paper, which I really don't like the idea of. So it made me wonder, like, do I really need Tomoe River paper, right? Over time, after using like this for a whole year and documenting, I also felt like the 52 GSM paper, it's a bit too flimsy for my taste for the purposes of memory keeping because I'm adding so much stuff to the pages. Like if you're just putting in one sticker, one photo, one little item, it might not seem like it, but when you add a lot of ephemera and tip-ins and fold-outs, like over each other, multiple items per page, I felt like I had so much stuff like hanging off my pages, but the page itself was not very sturdy because it was so thin. So I don't know if I explained that properly, but I just don't prefer it. I would like the paper to be like just a little bit more thick. Of course, not too thick like bullet journaling paper because then it would bulk up too much. So somewhere in between, or just like regular printer paper, I feel like would be enough. Which we will come to later. So I realize it's all a dilemma because I'm already creating books that are so chunky. Having thicker paper is not gonna, make it less chunky. So for my personal issue, there's no immediate solution, and it's just something that I noticed for myself. So I wanted to mention it, depending on what you are using the book for. So after all of these daily pages the entire year, of course I've used mine, so it's all like covered up, but at the end there are like a couple, like 6 or so, I think, blank grid pages. And then there are the templated pages at the back of this planner. They have like a timetable, which I've also covered up, but it's, you could put like a school schedule or your normal routine schedule here. They also have pages, some of them change year to year because they're like topical. But they always have like a favorites page and my 100 list. A lot of people do post about this. I didn't use it. The topical section is like this year was about having a good conversation. But I think for 2025, it's like about ramen or something. And then they have a 365 checkoff page. So it's really great for habit tracking. And the very, very last page is usually addresses. And the back of this is the personal, like 401 kind of page with the official Hobonichi information and branding, and I'm not showing it because it has my actual personal information there. But that is the whole book. So it's definitely like a templated, planner type of book. It's A5. It has, the yearly overview, the monthlies, the weeklies, the dailies, like it has it all kind of thing. And this was designed to be like a life book, right? Like the one book to fill up for the year. Now, as I use this, I already mentioned it got crazy chunky, and you can see here the results. And that is part of just my own issue of using so much ephemera. But I started to not like the quotes as well. I didn't like losing the space or just feeling like I had to cover it up with deco. And the extra pages I rarely use, so it just adds bulk. And ultimately, if I'm not using the weekly and I'm skipping certain daily pages as well, I just feel like it's all this extra stuff that I'm not using. So, having daily pages, it's like a blessing and a curse, right? Because daily pages, they keep you on track. There's that pressure, but pressure to record your days and remind you. And that can be a nice thing. It can be a very good thing if you want to, archive and memory keep. But because I use so many photos and everything just gets so chunky, there's so much ephemera for my kids, it's just a bit too much. So, I don't know, ultimately, what team are you on? Are you team dated or undated? It's interesting. So Hobonichi does have the same planner in the Avec version, which is the 2-book system. So it just means that they split this book into 2. So first 6 months of the year and then second half of the year. So obviously that would help because it would be less chunky, easier to use if it's split up. But I don't know why. I just don't like the idea. I just like the idea of having one book, even though in the past I have been forced to cut a notebook in half because it just got crazy. I don't know. So after using the Hobonichi for 2023, I decided to switch and use the Midori one day, one page. So this is what I have so far for this year of 2024. I just wanted to try something different and see how it would go for my memory keeping. I have been doing memory keeping for many years, since my, even before my kids were born. But traditional 12 by 12, scrapbook pages to digital things to bullet journals, kind of style from other inserts, dailies as well as weeklies. But I am still looking for the perfect book. I definitely like the A5 size in general. I feel like it's big enough to include 4 by 6 photos, which are very normal for me to print, but not huge like a 12 by 12 scrapbook page, which is again a very unwieldy kind of book when people want to look through it. So this year I'm trying the Midori one day, one page. It is also marketed as a planner. It comes with this creamy plastic kind of cover, so I think it's meant to be used just this way without any other cover. It probably might be a tight fit if you wanted to put it into an A5 cover, because this plasticky cover, you can see that there's millimeters of difference, right? From this is an A5 sized paper page, and the cover, you can see all around it's slightly larger. So that's something to note. If you like to use leather covers and things, it would have to fit like a Midori one day, one page specifically. So this notebook is dated for the year, because it has yearly overview calendars as well as dated monthlies. So you can immediately see the difference though. This is cream colored paper, and there's lots of white space. There's no grid, and it's definitely more of a minimalist kind of style, as opposed to the Hobonichi. The months, they start in December as well, but they only give you one extra month at the end, and I've covered it up as well. But those are the monthly dated pages, very sparse, lots of white space, and then it jumps into the daily pages, which are undated. So the only reason that this is a dated monthly planner or dated planner is because the months are dated, but the rest of the daily pages are undated, because they are just templated and meant to be filled in as you need. And I thought that would help with the chunk, because I would not be forced to record something on a daily basis, I would just go in as I need. So I chose this because there's no weeklies that I don't use anyways, and the dailies I would just add in as I wanted to. And so you can see here's a blank, it's a generic template. It has brackets up top where you're supposed to put like the date, and there are lines going through half the width of the page with timestamps starting at 8 to 24. If you look closer, there are dots like up above the lines where it says 8, and as well as like blank lines below 24. So you could sort of like go over this and shift it, shift the timeline if you wanted to, because there's enough lines before and after. So some people do use this as a planner, but the rest of the page is basically blank. And this is Midori MD paper, which is 80 GSM. So definitely thicker. 80 GSM is sort of like regular printer paper, like copy paper, in terms of thickness, but this is the MD paper, so it takes fountain pens. So definitely very different from Hobonichi that I've used before. Now, I've already used these two books, so obviously they're huge and chunky, but when they come brand new, the Midori MD one definitely is still thicker than like the Hobonichi, even though the Hobonichi has like other types of pages and layouts, but because of the GSM of the paper, it makes a huge difference. So this Midori One Day One Page, really minimal and simple, and yeah, the rest of the whole book is just these blank daily pages. And it goes all the way to the end like that. And the very, very end, it's sort of cute. The very last page has like the personal info page and the MD branding, but on the right here it says to be continued 2025. I think that's really cute, like for the next year. So that's it. So my idea was that using the Midori One Day One Page without dates, I would just add entries for my memory keeping as I had photos to add in or ephemera, and that would get rid of like all the blank pages or feeling like I had to fill in something. And also for like bigger events and things, I would have the flexibility of using multiple pages. So again, just more flexibility. And so far it has been working out, and we are in September right now, and it's obviously very chunky. So even though I am adding entries only when I have photos and, still doing my ephemera and all that kind of stuff, but I've pretty much ended up like in the same spot. You can see like it's just as chunky as my Hobonichi. This is, all of 2023. We're only in September. If I added more, it's probably going to be just as chunky as my Hobonichi. So even if I try to be minimal, I don't know, everything just gets crazy chunky. So I don't know if I have a solution to my personal particular problem of chunkiness. Obviously, because I am stubborn and wanting to keep or like find a way to keep everything in one book, I obviously just have to collect less ephemera, right? Like be more discerning and curate more, maybe. I don't know. So one thing I do like about the Midori is that the minimal open space of the pages, I like that because it's like mostly blank, and I'm purposely like not trying to cover up quotes or things like that. So I think that that's a good thing. And I like the fact that it is fountain pen friendly, and the paper at 80 GSM is like just right for me, not too flimsy, but not so thick like bullet journal kind of paper that would be even bulkier. So in using it for so many months now, I don't feel like I need like the timed thing though, and even like the brackets, even like the template of these daily pages is sort of like, I don't really need it. Like I don't follow it. It could be completely blank and I would be fine. So that's why I'm thinking for 2025, why don't I just move to a completely blank Midori notebook? Because I could get the same paper, but everything would be blank, so I can do my own calendars if I wanted to, or only do daily pages. I don't know. That is another thing to think about. In terms of the paper, I do find the Hobonichi paper a little like slippery when using fountain pens, but the Midori, I also use the 3-year Midori diary, so I guess maybe I just like the paper more in general. So I think that's why I prefer the Midori paper moving forward as well. So I don't know, perhaps my memory keeping will just have to be in multiple books because it's just not possible to keep it all in one book without it getting crazy chunky like this. Or I would have to seriously tone down my ephemera, but most of my ephemera is from my kids, so it's really hard to weed down. I mean, I feel like I am already weeding out so much stuff, so I don't know. But those are the differences between the Hobonichi cousin and the Midori one day one page. Obviously, from my point of view of having like use them for the specific purpose of memory keeping, like photos, ephemera, stickers, and journaling as well. So coming from a memory keeping standpoint is obviously very different from those who might use this actually for planning and who don't put much like ephemera or stickers. If you only write, then obviously you wouldn't have a chunk kind of problem. Really, the thing to consider is, do you want all the layouts, like the, you know, trackers, the yearly, monthly, weekly, and dailies, and structured sort of grid pages, or do you want like this sort of cream minimalist, very little structure in terms of just dated monthlies and then open pages to fill in? I do feel like these two planners are sort of like just two completely different sides of the spectrum, because one is just very like templated and they have their idea of how a life book, quote unquote, should be for Hobonichi. And then Midori is like super minimalist, flexible, and open for you to do what you want. I'm sure there are also many other notebooks to try, which is why I'm trying to keep an open mind and see what could work better for me, and just continue my discovery year to year of what like A5 notebook works the best for me. But I definitely like the A5 size in general. Again, I think it just works very well for photo documentation, because you can put a 4x6 photo, or you can put like two, you know what I mean, or less. So let me know what you think down in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this little comparison of my super chunky Hobonichi and Midori memory keeping journals. And by the way, if you love journaling and also using digital printables, I am building my community on Ko-fi. You can check out the link below in the description and find out more. But basically, my Ko-fi feed, if you become a member, you get monthly printables to download, from art prints to digital papers to journaling cards to use in your journaling. Of course, I also have a blog with totally free printables at tortajala.com. You can go there and download some pattern papers to try out and play with them in your next journal page. Thank you so much again, and until next time, bye.